Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Show podcast. Today's guest is no stranger to the show. With over 30 years of experience in hospitality, working with top brands, Jason E. Brooks is here to discuss communication and the feedback loop in a training environment. Jason, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
Doing absolutely wonderful. It's a nice, crisp, cool day. First day feeling like fall. So feeling good, man. About to start running outside like Rocky, find some stairs to run up, jump around, and just about pass out because I need to do it consistently versus just once. Kind of like communication.
Jason, before we jump in, can you talk at a high level about how important communication and feedback is when training staff at the restaurant?
Well, at first we know that restaurants are very complex. It's not what we see and what we experience when we go on vacation in Europe or in Latin America and we go to our favorite restaurant and we say, "Oh man, this is easy. I can do this. I can, cook this up and people will come in and pay me." When it comes down to how to train people to do what you do, it is complex, but there are definitely key things that one can do to help make that training more effective. And you know me, I like the number five. So here's five ways to make your communication more effective while training in the restaurant. Number one, clarity and simplicity, keeping it clear and simple, using simple words to explain task. We tend to think that everyone knows what cleaning is, or what sweeping is, or what greeting is, or seating a table because we believe that everyone has been out to eat. They've been to a restaurant. My kids have grown up in restaurants and we've went out to eat twice a week, every week, so they know how to sit a table. It's not true. We have to be very clear and very simple whenever we explain tasks. And when we do, we have to avoid any kind of acronyms or jargon. Again, we may think that people know the restaurant business, but they don't. They know the acronyms for social media like WTF, but they don't know what FIFO is. So saying first in, first out, and even not that way, saying the first things that were made first, we have to use before we use the newer items. So again, keeping it clear and simple. And then to tag on to clear and simple, explaining why. There's a lot of times we think that telling people something during training as a loose term command that they will do it. But we know that kids and even young adults these days need to know the why behind each action. That helps them to understand if they don't do X, then Y will happen. Number two, adaptability. Knowing how to adapt your training for the individual that you are training, for their experience level. This is the first time in many generations, if any generation, that we have 4 or 5 different generations learning within our business. So knowing how to tailor your communication to the individual's experience level, very important. Number three, active listening. Active listening means that training isn't just about us telling one what to do or a group of people what to do. It is the encouraging of asking questions and giving feedback, and versus just thinking through what is the next item that I need to teach them, actively listening to what they're asking. There may be a pattern as to what they're asking and how that they are asking, that you can then learn how they actually listen and learn how they learn. But active listening helps to make that communication in training much easier. Number four, patience. In the restaurant business, patience isn't something that we have. We want it immediate and we want it now, but we have to practice patience when it comes down to training. And then number five, being consistent. Like I said, I can't run up the rocky stairs one time. I gotta be consistent in doing it. It's not just a one deal. So being consistent in how we explain things, in how we train, in how we perform. It's not only for the people that we are actively training right then, it's also for the ones watching us, standing off to the side, because they are picking up on everything that we are saying to those new hires as well. But that is 5 ways to make communication more effective while training.
That's excellent, and I appreciate that. And yes, there are far too many acronyms. I think we talked about that in one of our previous episodes. Acronyms are running amok. And I just wanted to clarify FIFO, FIFO, is not FAFO, which is FAFO. For those who know, those are two very, very different things. So, if we could talk a little bit about varying experience levels. So, what
Mhm.
are some key elements of communication when you're training staff, someone who's been around for 5 years, who's new to your restaurant, as opposed to someone who's completely green? How should a manager deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you look at the varying experience levels, you have to think about what are the day one through day five standards that you are teaching. I like to think of about training in four corners. It is the learning aspect, whether the learning aspect is a written aspect or a video aspect, or whichever aspect that does the introduction to the information before they get into their position that they're being trained in, whether it's at the host stand or at the bar or a server or in the kitchen. But there should be some kind of materials that they have to review prior to going into that role. Someone that's more experienced probably understands those basics to where you're getting into shoulder to shoulder much sooner, and you're able to take that person that's a 4 out of 5 on their experience into a shoulder to shoulder training, going over a much higher level than you would with someone new. Now, that doesn't mean that we can skip the basics, because the basics at Olive Garden and the basics at Fogo de Chao is still two different basics. So you still should be reviewing basics with someone that is more experienced. You just have to know that you have to be a bit more clear, a bit more simple with someone that does not have that much experience within the restaurant business, like sweeping. If you've ever watched someone that is 18 years old, that's never worked in the restaurant business, sweep a floor, I'm telling you, whenever the first time you see it, it's going to make you cry. Like, is this what we've come to? Something as basic as that, you would think that people would get, but no. You have to go through the actual details of how to sweep in areas, into piles, and scoop in order to then move to the next area. Someone that is a bit more experienced, not so much. It's more of sweep before you go.
That's
So you're saying it's not a good idea to just sweep things under the rug.
I
If
mean, if this was politics, it happens all the time. But we're not talking about
Just
politics.
don't
We
open
are
that can of worms, please, please,
we talking
please.
about restaurants here.
that is funny. So, okay, so you mentioned learning styles, right? Like visual, kinesthetic, and sound. How do you call audio?
Yes.
And that comes to mind or brings to mind all these things, like so many different things about how unique every person is. So my question to you is, how do you tailor feedback for different types of employees, from front of house to kitchen staff and teams? And are there any specific strategies you use to ensure feedback is both constructive and motivating?
Well, we just got finished talking about what's the differences between someone that is newer and someone that is more tenured, but you are correct. There is a difference between front of house and kitchen teams as well. Whenever you're tailoring this kind of training, you have to think about the different type of roles that your team members are going to be working in, and then understanding their unique role as well as their individual personalities. So you are correct. Those three things: their role, their their personality, and their level of understanding from past experiences, you have to tailor. But let's just take front of house versus back of house, because there's always a war between front of house and back of house. So for front of house, and there we go with the acronyms, servers, hosts, bartenders, they are working directly with customers. So whenever you're training them, I'd like to think of them as using the feedback that focuses on service quality, that focuses on how they communicate, that focuses on their attitude, because you're thinking about the direct customer experience in the moment. So whenever I'm training front of house staff, I like to have them picture there's a third person sitting or standing with us, and that person is the customer. And how they react in those training situations, they have to think about how that's going to affect that customer positively or negatively. I also like to use role playing. Role playing for front of house gives two or more people the ability to think about one person playing as the bartender, one person playing as the guest, and then seeing how they can improve their interactions to help resolve their issues better. And when we're doing that, whether we are thinking through having that guest there or using role playing, we're always thinking through how to focus on the soft skills, how to focus on those interpersonal skills. And it's not just the soft skills with the direct guest. It's how they're using those soft skills in their teamwork. Because when they are using it through teamwork, when they are attentive to everyone around them, and including their other coworkers, that helps to boost the motivation of the team. Now, back of house, the kitchen teams is a lot more technical. And when I mean technical, if you really think about what they're truly focused on, truly, speed of service, being consistent, and being accurate. Even when you think about guest service feedback, those scores you get online from the customer that are rating you a 1 through a 5. Yes, a lot of it is about the server, but the other aspects, speed, being consistent, and being accurate. So whenever I am interacting with back of house and training them, it's more of the technical skills, how efficient that they are, how consistent is their plating, how are their cook times. So when I'm giving feedback, it's very actionable and very clear on what needs to improve on the technical aspect. And then when I'm doing that, it's me remaining calm under pressure. And not just me, but for you, the watcher, or you, the listener, it's you remaining calm under pressure. The kitchen is already a high stress environment. So is the front. But the kitchen has that wall there that kind of lets that pressure release a little bit more. So keeping calm under pressure whenever you are giving that feedback helps to make sure that the person you're giving that feedback to is focused on the action that they need to change future behavior, versus on the emotion that's being given if you're not being calm.
That is it. It makes me think of The Bear, the show, where and this is gonna turn into a question for you. Is it that because why Gordon Ramsay and some chefs are known to be a-holes? Like it's like the stress over there. And I remember a lot of the things in the show. It's every time this guy runs in and he's like, da, 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 F these, da, da," and then comes back and he's like,
It is nice
and
and
then
calm.
like
Yes.
calm and nothing, like nothing happening. How do
You are correct. Every second counts. Every second counts, because every second time is money within the kitchen. Not only when it comes to the pay rate for your back of house employees, but time is money when it comes to the food, when it comes to the whole times, when it comes to when a sauce is perfect or when it breaks. Every second counts. So when it comes down to an a-hole, and they're being that a-hole within the moment, because the first thing that they're thinking of, speed, consistency, accuracy. That calming is the very last thing. But if you want to be effective at changing true behavior in the future, you may want to take the calming first to get to the speed, consistency, and then that accuracy.
I want to piggyback off of Jose's previous question, because you've got a lot of different types of employees, not just front of house and back of house, but you also have different languages, different types of behavior, different personality types. So that's going to create some barriers in terms of communication. What are some of the barriers that you've seen during your training sessions, and how would you overcome them to ensure that everyone on the team is aligned?
You already named the very first one that hits the top of the bucket every single time. Language barriers, because our teams in restaurants are typically very diverse. Yes, there are some areas that may not be, but typically you have very diverse restaurant teams. Some that speak different languages, speak their native language, and some it's not even the language. It is the slang terminology used within that region that can make it sound like a different language. So, language barrier is one of the very first challenges when it comes down to any communication barrier that we have. And that solution is using simple, clear language. And again, avoid using slang terms, avoid using acronyms. Acronyms are Acronyms are used typically whenever things have already been set and good to go. The training has been done, and now they are well onto their way of doing their job well. Then you can begin to really drill in on those acronyms. But whenever you're first going through that language barrier, keeping it simple, then visual aids. If the language barrier is that challenging, visual aids and shoulder to shoulder training is the best things to really get past that, because body language is a universal language. Again, body language is a universal language that most of the time you can't overlook that. So that shoulder to shoulder and that visual aid helps to then skip past that. One last piece that can help you be effective with the language barrier is using the assistance of team members. Now, this doesn't mean that you're putting the training off on them. If you are the trainer, if you are the one training, you are helping them assist you, but it shouldn't be put off onto a newer bilingual team member. That shoulder to shoulder and that visual aid really helps to get past that barrier.
That that makes me very curious about, I mean, me having been or being a multilingual, even just with all my experience in English, if I hear something in Spanish or I'm thinking like a thought in Spanish, the language could come and trump in, and so I can see the challenge. The universal concept, I think, is really good, but then when you're working shoulder to shoulder with someone, I mean, it's that real-time feedback, right? That it's going to be really important. How important is it? And can you share some examples of how immediately feedback has impacted the learning curve for employees?
Well, first, real-time feedback in the restaurant world is deathly important. And I say deathly quite literally because of food safety. When we're thinking about real-time feedback, the first two words that come to mind for me is food safety. Whenever we have to make something happen within a restaurant, it's because we are dealing with the every second counts when it comes down to food safety. The 4 hour window of the temperature of food that is safe, which is why we do temperature checks every 4 hours. But one of the examples that comes to mind is, and this is quite literal, and anyone listening or watching this knows this, when a timer goes off, someone stops the chime and no action is taken. That right there calls for real-time feedback. You do not let a timer go off. You simply stop the timer and no action is taken. That is when real-time feedback has to be immediate. So that right there is one of the key things, that real-time feedback is very important. And there's two feedbacks. There's real-time feedback, and then there's planned feedback. Both very important. Whenever you give that real-time feedback, you're giving the team member that immediate understanding of their mistakes to adjust their action and then build confidence as they learn, to understand their mistake, adjust their action, and build confidence as they learn. If they don't build confidence on that back part, they're just going to be confused. You have to make sure that you do not give silent approval. And we do that a lot in restaurants. We walk past something, seeing that it's incorrect, and say nothing. If you see something, say something. So that real-time feedback, very, very important. And training isn't simply training. Training is, though, simply boosting confidence. It is boosting confidence for the person that's in that role to be more confident into what they're doing. And what I mean by that is because real-time feedback isn't just negative. There's a lot of times that we hear certain words and there's this negative spin that we put on it, like accountability. Whenever people hear that, they think, oh, that is the very last moment before I have to fire someone for doing something wrong. Now I have to hold them accountable. That's not correct. We hold them accountable by every single day defining what success is within that role, within that position. Same thing with feedback. Feedback isn't waiting until something is wrong and then saying something. Feedback is giving them that positive information back of when they're doing something well as well. So feedback is not only reserved for negative behaviors. And then repetition. Real-time feedback helps to build that repetition of them doing something right or them making the change to change that behavior to start doing something better. When you give that real-time feedback, it gives them that time to adjust that mistake, adjust their action, and build the confidence in order to learn better.
I love it.
Valuable advice. And I gotta apologize because my inner voice, I don't know whether it's because we're demonizing acronyms or not, but all of the advice that Jason is giving us, I keep making up like acronyms in my head, like RTF, real time feedback, like all of these things. It's just like that's just how my brain works. So I need to apologize because acronyms aren't the way to go. It's not clear communication. People don't understand all of the acronyms that we come up with. Acronyms are like the shorthand between close knit teams, you know. But let's. I know we're talking to the right guy for this next question, Jason. What about training when you are dealing with a larger franchise across multiple locations? You got a fast paced environment. How do you ensure consistency and communication across all of those locations, all of those teams?
The first thing is go digital, baby.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in order to go digital, you can go digital with trash, which doesn't help, or you can go digital with something that is effective, which does help. So, first thing is standardized training materials. SOPs, acronym, standard operating procedures. It has to be detailed, uniform training materials like manuals, checklists, videos, video tutorials, digital resources. That are the standards and the procedures for everyone to follow, and that can be easily updated. And the reason why I say make it digital is because any brand, any mom and pop that's been open longer than 5 years, if all of your training is only written or typed out, someone will find that spec from 5 years ago and they will continue to follow that spec, and you will be losing money in the ounces in your new bar mix. So you have to make sure that it's digital and
Can you
that
give us a
everyone
Jason?
follows it.
I hate to
Yep.
interrupt. Can you give us an example of losing money because of something that's written, say, 5 years ago? What's an example?
Well, let's say this. Let's say your regular margarita, one drink. Let's say it's ounce and a half of your margarita, 3 ounces of mix, and then a splash of something. Okay. Doing it once, twice, 3 times, and it's off by a half ounce. You may not notice it. But let's say that same margarita, you're making it as a batch. So you're actually making a 3-gallon batch to get you through the Friday night rush because it's your most popular drink. You've put it on TikTok, you've put it on social media, and now it's selling out the wazoo. So now you're making batches. If that batch amount is incorrect because it was typed up from 5 years ago and you adjusted that size of the batch just because prices have gone up. So now you've made those adjustments on what the mix is. That's where you're losing money. That's where it's very important to keep your recipes digital. So when you change it, everyone sees it, especially when you're a large organization. Because this question is specifically from what I can recall, it's about large groups and about franchisees. So if someone in Maine is working off of written documents, but the people that's in Miami have been using the actual digital aspect, and the teams in Maine are like, why is our beverage cost so high? But that bartender that's been there since day one is like, it's because I know the recipe. I've been here since day one. I'm gonna go show you the book. And that's the first red flag is you're still using the book. We have changed to a digital recipe standard for the last 2 years, and we updated it because of the pricing in order to make it more cost effective. So we've actually changed what the batch recipe is. That's what I mean.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Now, but to finish off, though, there's a few more things when it comes down to being consistent with training. So there is making your training material detailed for everything, checklist, and making it digital. Second thing, train the trainer, especially if you are a large restaurant business. Train the trainer programs are very important. It's when you have, let's say it's a new rollout of a new product, whether behind the bar or in the kitchen, and you come out with a new product every quarter. With that new product, you may have new procedures or new steps. So you have your trainers traveling to help roll out these items to certain regions. You should have a train the trainer program to where you're bringing in all your trainers in to help teach them how to properly train this new product. You can't just send paper or just a video to the trainers because they run across very specific questions or regional challenges that are in their area. Train the trainer program, bringing them all in to one place to help train them helps to make sure that the training programs are very consistent. And then the last two pieces, data. When it comes down to training, using key performance indicators or KPIs, data, something measurable, is very important. And that data, when it comes down to training, can be how many people have completed the new module on their online training course. What is the new mix of sales for this new product? And then always follow up and getting feedback, whether from the digital training, from the trainer, or from the data, always following up on the information that you're seeing from all three.
Oh my
We are
God.
big on data here, so we can appreciate that.
Yeah, and every time there's two things that happen when you come to a show is that one, we learn so much, and two, you leave me thinking about all this crazy stuff. So guess what I have for you?
What you got?
Kidding. So no, seriously, a couple of things that came to mind, and I
Well, say
think
you're
that
such a wild card. I never know what's going to come out of your mouth, regardless of how scripted our interviews are. We don't know what's going to happen next.
So
I
this
love
this
it.
is what has been coming to mind. I mean, a lot. You know, Gord, I'm all about one of the things that you can know me for is integrity, is breaking your word, and then recommitting, basically recognizing, acknowledging your mistake, and just create something new from there, like a breakdown to a breakthrough. And and you mentioned that how we're, and it's not just in restaurants. People are scared of the word accountability, integrity. It's just like they usually mean something negative, right? And we're human beings. We think the tiger's coming at me. So how do you actually create a culture where actually employees feel comfortable giving and receiving feedback? Like, how do you train them to receive feedback? What do you tell them? And why is it so crucial?
One of the things that Jose, you and Gordon have both told me is that I am consistent. So I'm going to stick to that term. I'm going to stick with that label, and I'll be consistent with this answer. One-on-ones. One-on-ones is the key to creating a culture for feedback. One-on-ones is also key number 4 in my 5 keys to help teams build back their team, build back their time to get things done. And key number 4 is engage through one-on-ones. And one-on-ones helps to build the culture of giving feedback. It's taking them out of their environment, again, whether at the host stand or in the service section or behind the bar or at the pantry station or at the grill station, taking them out of their environment, setting down in a neutral zone and being able to create that space for them to give feedback in the moment versus in that high stress environment that we are continually in. That's the first step, is doing one-on-ones. And I'm not going to get into the details of that. Go back to one of our other episodes and pick up on the tips for one-on-ones. Another example, though, lead by example. Lead by example for giving feedback. That means that you are responding positively. You are listening attentively. You are seeking feedback from the team, even if you are the general manager or VP of operations. You are still consistently seeking feedback from everyone that is in the building when you are out visiting restaurants. You are listening actively to what they're saying, helping to find answers to their challenges, and you are responding in a way that is positive to help set that tone for the entire team. Another way is to help to provide a safe and supportive environment. Make it clear to your team that their opinion is valued, whether the feedback is on a process, on a product, on a person. Anytime someone is giving you feedback, let them know that you value that feedback. But that feedback culture has to start from the top. It has to be everyone walking into that restaurant, whether it's a single store owner, the dishwasher, or 12,000 location Starbucks. Everyone walking in has to let them know that you do want the feedback. You want to know what's on their mind, and you're giving positive feedback as well as constructive feedback. And you're doing it in a setting that is taking them out of their normal environment to focus on the conversation at hand.
Yeah. It makes me think of.
Sorry,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So I was just going to say that one really great thing about having these episodes with the three of us is that Jason and Jose are the yin and the yang. One is a wild card and one is very, very consistent. So I appreciate that. And you guys make it worthwhile. So thank you for that.
Just makes the dynamics better.
That's
Richer.
right. You got to have balance. You have balance in the universe, you know?
That's it.
Okay. On that note, consistency can be one of them. I keep thinking about breakdowns and breakthroughs and how empowering that can be for humans, especially when you share it. But with all of this that we've said, and if you could in one sentence give some advice to a restaurateur audience, what would that be?
One piece of advice is that although every second counts, we're still dealing with people. Although every second counts, we're still dealing with people. And when we take that into account, we will lead with the people first to get to the end result that we want. We still have to do it within a timely time frame.
That's an excellent way to encapsulate this episode. That's all the time we have today. Jason, now's your time to plug away. Where can people connect with you? What is your platform of choice?
Platform, LinkedIn, always great resource, great community, and jasonebrooks.com. You will soon be able to join my online community the Manager Leader Coach Community. I will be launching that within the next few weeks. It'll be a place to where managers, leaders, and coaches, people leaders are able to share ideas, ask questions, give feedback on the best way to help build their teams, get back their time, and get things done.
Sounds like a wonderful community. We cannot wait for that to start. Speaking of plugs, this podcast is sponsored by Dine Pricing, real-time restaurant profitability. Dine Pricing uses artificial intelligence to improve restaurant profitability by dynamically updating menus across digital channels like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub. Again, that's all the time we have today. Thanks again to Jason for joining us. Until next week, say goodbye, Jose.
Humans first, my people. Goodbye, Jose.
All right. Good job. Well done, everyone. Thank you, Jason.